We live in a time that celebrates independence. We are told, be yourself, think for yourself, choose your own path. And in many ways, that's a gift. It allows people to connect to life in ways that feel meaningful and authentic. But it's more than that. We live in a world where everything is customizable. We customize from our coffee orders down to the smallest detail. We customize our playlists, our news feeds, our social media. Algorithms are designed to show us exactly what we already like, what we already agree with, what already feels comfortable. Even our identities are something we are told to shape, define, and refine on our own terms. And at the center of all of it is one small but powerful word, I. What do I want? What do I believe? Or what works for me? And again, there is something deeply good in that. Judaism has always valued the individual voice. We are meant to ask questions, to wrestle, to engage, to take ownership. But what happens when everything is filtered through my preferences, my instincts, my understanding? What gets lost? Because at some point, a life built entirely around I can become very small. The Torah invites us to ask, what happens when my way becomes the only way? In the Torah portion Shemini, we read about Nadav and Avihu, the sons of Aaron, the high priest, and what should have been the greatest moments of their lives. The Mishkan, the tabernacle, has just been inaugurated. The divine presence has appeared. Fire has come down from heaven. It's a moment of closeness, of joy, of connection between God and the people. And then, suddenly, something goes terribly wrong. The Torah tells us that each of them took his fire pan, and they brought before God what the Torah calls an alien fire, something that God had not commanded. And in an instant, a fire comes forth from God and consumes them. It's a very shocking moment, especially knowing who they are. These are not outsiders. They are not rebels in the usual sense. They are Aaron's children, Kohanim, priests. They were holy, devoted, chosen ones. Which makes us wonder, what exactly did they do wrong? The commentators notice something subtle in the language. It says, each man took his fire pan. They acted individually. They didn't consult one another. They didn't consult Moses. They didn't consult Aaron. Some commentators suggest that their mistake was that they acted alone. And that's what makes this story so unsettling. Because their problem wasn't distance from God. Their problem may have been that they felt too close. Close enough to say, I understand what God wants. I don't need to ask anybody else. I don't need to check. I don't need him. And suddenly, that ancient story begins to feel very familiar. Because we live in a world where people often say, I'll do Judaism my way. Or one that I hear all the time, I'm spiritual but not religious. I connect in my own way. I don't need someone to tell me how to practice. And again, there is something deeply true and even beautiful in that. Judaism has always valued questioning, interpretation, personal engagement. But Shemini pushes us to ask, at what point does personalization become disconnection? There is a difference between independence and isolation. Independence is thoughtful, engaged, and rooted in learning. It says, I am part of a tradition and I bring my voice to it. But isolation is something else. Isolation is self-referential, it is unaccountable, and it's close to challenges. It says, my voice is enough, my understanding is enough, I don't need anyone else. And the line between those two is thinner than we might think. Now, to be fair, many people today struggle with religious authority for good reasons. Institutions have failed. Leaders have disappointed. Tradition can sometimes feel rigid or out of touch. So the instinct to say, I'll figure this out on my own, is understandable. It comes from a real place. But the Torah is also warning us that total self-reliance comes with its own risks. Because when we answer only to ourselves, we lose something essential. We lose conversation. We lose accountability. We lose humility. Nadav and Avihu may have believed they were doing something beautiful. They may have felt inspired, filled with love of God, moved to bring something of themselves into that sacred moment. But Judaism insists on something deeply countercultural. Even the greatest among us do not go and do it alone. Moses listens, the rabbis argue with one another. We learn in pairs, in community, in dialogue, because truth in Judaism is rarely something I create by myself. It's something we build together. And maybe that leads us to a deeper insight. The opposite of arrogance is not self-doubt. It is relationship. To be in relationship means I listen, I learn, I make space for someone else's voice alongside my own. So when does independence becomes ego? Maybe it's when we stop listening, when we stop learning, or when we stop needing others. Or even more simply, when our Judaism no longer has room for anyone else. Nadav and Avihu reached for God. They wanted closeness, but they reached without anyone else. And perhaps that is the quiet warning at the heart of this Torah portion, that holiness is not created alone. Holiness happens in community, in conversation. To come close to God is not just about passion. It's about knowing that we are not the only ones standing there, that there were all our voices before us, that there are voices all around us, and that there will be voices after us. And maybe that is the deepest message of Shemini, that to truly draw near to God, we must never stand alone.